recording, and just say welcome to everybody. Thanks for being here. This is the second of our Hylo crowdfunding campaign launch events. We had a really awesome event yesterday. If you haven't had a chance to see it, check it out on Facebook. There's a video from the live stream that is on my Facebook page and the Terran Collective Facebook page and our Facebook group, and kind of share it all over. But we're really excited today to carve out a big chunk of time to talk to David Atkinson of Holo and Holochain. So thank you so much for being here, David. Before we get started, we just love to do a little moment of grounding and just presencing. And if you want to take a moment to settle into your seat or wherever you are and take a few deep breaths, shake out whatever else has been going on today. And yeah, I'd like to just acknowledge that we are here. I'm here broadcasting from Huichin, from Chochenyo Ohlone territory, also known as Berkeley, California. And we are doing this work building kind of the technology that we see as needed for a world that works for all. And we are doing it in service to the next 7 generations and in honor of all of our ancestors who brought us here today, and want to particularly acknowledge and honor the indigenous people of this land who were living on their occupied territory, and also the slaves who built this country. And we do this work to try and heal our relationship with each other and with the planet, and a lot of that is about healing traumas of the past. So that's really important to us. I want to acknowledge that at the beginning of all of our calls and meetings and events. So yeah, thank you all for being here. And we want to get started with just a kind of intro of what are we doing here? What is Hylo? Why are we launching this campaign? What are we raising money for? Before we kind of introduce David and Holochain and our relationship together. And so I'm actually gonna pass it over to Claire to kind of do the introduction and overview of our Hylo strategic plan.
Great, thank you, Tibet. Going to share my screen here, 1 second. Here we go. All right, can you guys see this beautiful image? All right, so Hylo is the social coordination platform for a thriving planet. That's where we're going. And I'm gonna just try to spend about 10 minutes going through what we're doing here and what is this platform, what are we trying to do with it, and how does it relate to Holochain? So our goal at Terran Collective and with Hylo is to amplify cooperation among people regenerating our communities and our planet. We are very specifically focusing on helping the people that are working towards a just transition at this time in history, with so much happening in the world and such a great need to return to a healthy reciprocal relationship with the earth, with each other, and with ourselves. And technology is not the only answer to this, but we believe that an online coordination tool is necessary to help us get to a world that works for all. So we believe Hylo can be that tool. Hylo has been around for a few years. It has been designed as a coordination tool for communities and groups. And we have been given stewardship of Hylo through a relationship with Holo. And we are using it as a substrate to expand its awesome existing functionality and build even more tools that the regenerative movement really needs. And the reason that we think online coordination needs a tool like this is because as a culture, we have lost trust in a really big way. Trust has disintegrated for lots of reasons. We can mention racism, colonialism, patriarchy, and neoliberal capitalism as some huge causes. And we believe the challenge of our time is to heal these divisions and rebuild trustworthy relationships and institutions so we can coordinate effectively to birth a world that works for all. So, right, like the polarization that's happening now is really extreme. We're having a hard time interacting with our neighbors, with our family. We are having a hard time trusting our institutions. The very fabric of democracy seems to be unraveling. And we don't have a good relationship with our planet. We are not living within what the Earth is capable of sustaining, and that's really impacting us. And on top of all that, our technology seems like it's designed to exacerbate these things, with typical social media platforms designed simply to extract our attention and addict us, not to help us achieve any goals together. So we really think it's time for something different. Our theory of change is that we need to help build relationships and trust so that we can, as a group, unlock collective sense-making, collective choice-making, and then impactful action. And creating this scaffolding for communities will help transition from the current extractive economy into a regenerative one. So that is what we think we can do with Hylo. So we are designing Hylo to lead communities on a journey toward an evolution in cooperation. It really starts with relationships for us and trust. So having a platform where people in a community can exchange asks and offers, come together with events, collaborate on projects in a non-transactional way. All of that is on Hylo right now, and it's really powerful for building relationships. And when those things are achieved, that builds trust. And what we're building now is things like a geographic map, which we just released, which helps people make sense of the land they live on and learn what's happening in their area. So that really helps us with making sense of the world at a time when it's very difficult to use the internet to understand what is real. So we want Hylo to be able to do that for people by making visible the flows of resources and relationships that exist in a community so that we can make good decisions based on that. Collective decisions through decision-making tools that put the power back in the hands of all the people that are affected by these decisions. We can't wait for good decisions to be made by our governments anymore or by corporations. We can make decisions for ourselves as the people and decide how we want to collaborate and what kind of impactful action we want to take together. So additionally, Hylo is really different from other collaboration platforms that are out there. We have a holonic structure where we are architecting the group dynamics to match how people really coordinate in real life. So groups can be inside of multiple communities, communities inside of multiple networks, and networks are part of global movements that have shared goals. So what's really important about this is that instead of creating more silos, like a lot of tools out there, we are busting out of the silos and letting communities collaborate across groups to achieve shared goals and work on one project together. Because no single community or group or organization is going to regenerate the planet single-handedly. We have to be able to cooperate in large numbers across large, diverse communities to achieve a shared goal. And so we're really designing Hylo for that. And additionally, we have this place-based value. So a lot of us are very disconnected from the land we live on, and that makes it hard to really care for that land. But around the world, a real important thing right now is for us all to be caring for the land that we live on. So this idea of bioregionalism is woven into our design. And a bioregion is simply the emergent boundary expressed by nature, such as in the Bay Area, we have the Bay Area watershed, which is this amazing hydrologic system that all of us who live here really depend on, no matter who we are. And we should be able to make choices that benefit our watershed as the people of this landscape. All right, so all of these communities making decisions together with their neighbors on their land, what will they be able to do? What kind of decisions are they making? One thing really important right now that groups are starting to use Hylo for is food security. So creating alternate food distribution networks that can share local food efficiently in case we see supply chains breaking down, which has happened some and definitely will be happening in the future. We need to be able to be locally self-reliant and resilient. On that note, mutual aid, just in everyday life, but especially when a disaster strikes, neighbors should be able to help each other. And there's not really a great tool that's ever been designed for mutual aid. So that's definitely something that can easily happen on Hylo. Collective decision-making. So as a people of one community, we should be able to pool our resources and allocate them towards projects that we trust that have proven outcomes, and just make decisions on where we want to go. And ultimately, this idea of coordinating in place. So being able to make decisions that cross political boundaries for the good of the people of one landscape. And for all of these things, what's really exciting to us is that we already have 50 active communities using Hylo every day for things like this. And we have 1,500 active users. So we have amazing communities on Hylo already, and we're just at a point where we're ready to continue to scale and continue to build and do that in partnership with our community. And how we do that is very, very important to us. So our values are embedded at every level of the stack. We are building Hylo for the 7 generations. We are building focused on relationships. We do this in co-creation with the community, with all the stakeholders, with people that use Hylo, with people that benefit from Hylo, with our partners. We value transparency. Everything we're doing in the open. Our operations, decision-making, code, governance is open to all. Interoperability is critical, and I'm sure we'll talk about that today. We're not trying to create another silo. We want to bust out of that and share data according to what members want to do with their own data. Being able to use that across different platforms is really critical at this time. So data sovereignty, the data should belong to the members always, and we are never going to sell or rent or share data. Inclusivity, so diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important to us. We are out of balance with overwhelmingly white representation here, and that's something we are working very hard to correct. So making sure that all voices are represented at the table in the development of a tool like this is critical to us and something we're working on. And yeah, finally, collective stewardship. So a tool like this should be governed by the people. And we're working towards a cooperative governance system so that all stakeholders can benefit and participate in the decisions and governance of this platform. Yeah, so I'm not going to dig in too much to all the features we have planned, but we are looking towards a time horizon where we integrate with Holochain when that system is ready for mass adoption, hopefully soon. Looking forward to the updates from David in just a minute. And all of this is available in our strategic plan if you want to drill deeper on the things that we are trying to build. Our team is really epic. Several of us have spent a lot of time already working on decentralized applications, myself, Tibet, and Aaron. Oh, and Chen. And so we are very excited to do this work and qualified. This team has incredible skills. I could spend a lot of time extolling everyone's virtues, but I'm trying to move through this quickly. And how are we doing this? Hylo is a gift. We are running this as a nonprofit and a tech commons. We will have Hylo be free to use and open source forever. We are not rent seeking here. We are planning to resource the platform through donations now and into the future, and perhaps weave in something like optional transaction tips to help the platform sustain itself. Very importantly, the goal to fully decentralize Hylo when that's possible onto the Holochain ecosystem. So right now, Hylo is a centralized traditional web application. And yeah, we want to bust out of that as quickly as possible and move into the internet of the future. And so for this critical period of time in the evolution of Hylo, we are asking for $100,000 from our community. We love that we can offer our community the chance to participate in this way. in creating something that is a gift to this movement. So for anyone that resonates with this vision, please consider a gift to Hylo to help us move forward with this so that we can focus on this full time. And yeah, it's a story that we're all a part of. We're not doing this alone. We need you guys. And so we're asking for your support. Thank you so much for listening to my talk. And I'll hand it back to Tibet now to chat with David.
Thank you, Claire. So now I want to shift to talking about Holo and Holochain. And first, just introduce David Atkinson, who's on the leadership team of Holo. I don't actually know what your title is. Maybe you can introduce yourself and then give a quick kind of intro of, what is Holochain? And I think we want to kind of navigate, I think do a little bit of a high level summary and introduction for people that don't know anything about Holochain. And then we'll also go, try to dive deeper and get more into the weeds of the exciting work we want to do together. But yeah, let's start with the broad overview.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Okay. Yeah. What is my title? The last time I checked, my title was commercial director, which at an organization like Holochain is quite an interesting role. And my accountabilities really come down to the ecosystem. So, and it's not your normal ecosystem, I guess, that we're building. The core team is, we come from different backgrounds, education, intentional communities, and we try and use the inversion of whatever is regularly used in ecosystem building. So if in general you push, well, we won't push. We'll wait for pull. In crypto world, in general, you fund. So we support people with other capitals, and we support people to find a path. So yeah, it's a magical world and a magical role, and when really we're just building a community where what we're doing matters, but not because of the technology, although that is a part of it, but it's the change in structures that the technology enables, as well as the journey along the way and the relationships and projects and tools and communities people build. And our job is just to support that, really, by doing that work ourselves. In other words, we do nothing except more deeply like grow. So we call it ecosystem growth, but the growth is inner growth. And from that will be the outer growth.
Beautiful.
If anyone has a clue what I do from that, I will be blown away.
well, maybe let's take a step back, and if you could just summarize Holochain first, and then we can make that a little more clear.
Yeah, of course. So Holochain is a technology that's the simplest way of describing it is like it's a pattern, right? Or a protocol, a framework. It's all fine, but it's a way of building distributed applications. And the simplest way I've learned to think about that is that if I'm running a distributed Twitter, that means that I'm actually running the application of Twitter. I'm an owner of the application of Twitter. I'm communicating and connecting. Just like Twitter, except the whole application is running on my device. I'm an owner of that application, and I'm also in service of the activity of the application. I'm providing the infrastructure for it to run, and I'm supporting by holding other people's data as well as my own. And because I'm the owner, and the operator of this application, well, then a whole series of things that don't currently happen in centralized applications are possible. So I can evolve it. I can choose to participate only with certain people. I can behave like I have actual control over my digital identity and my digital worlds. And so Holochain is just a simple a simple framework that allows that to happen. It doesn't create this big thing. It creates the ability for things to be built on it that then can connect with other applications and other applications, etc. So it's just it's a seed that from which an ecosystem can grow.
What would you say is the kind of core, what are the core problems you're trying to solve, or what's the theory of change?
The centralized computing, client server computing doesn't make any more sense, because why shouldn't we be owning the applications that we operate? It's a
and the data.
pretty
well,
the thing, and because if you just own your data, you're still relying on somebody else to make that data useful. So by shifting into this paradigm, you give yourself you own not just your data, but the ability to be able to use, operate, interact with your data forever.
Right.
Just hitting an export button isn't good enough for almost everybody.
Right. Yeah. Cool. So why did you, maybe just to tell the background a little bit, so Hylo was, Claire mentioned this, Hylo was built by some friends of ours, Edward West and Julia Pope and Lawrence, who's on the call, and others. And, they got it to a certain point of functionality, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it next, and found this really cool partnership or agreement with Holo to purchase Hylo. How did that come about, and what was the goal or intention there?
A few different things. So I think, yeah, there's lots of people in our the organization and the ecosystem, lots of mutual friendships. There are a couple of things that were really appealing. So firstly, there are a whole bunch of really early web applications that just really found it really hard to grow because they didn't want to monetize in a traditional way. But as they became popular, the infrastructure costs kept rising, and that gap just kept growing. And we see that today, and that problem hasn't been solved. And that's one of the big problems that I'm convinced Holochain will solve.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm really, well, that's again this ecosystem growth thing. I have to grow. One of the forms of growth is to restrain myself, not restrain, but just to let go of the excitement and allow it to happen, because it's going to be a really amazing thing that all of this growth that happened in the internet, in the 90s and early 2000s, that will actually be possible. Those types of communities that began to thrive and then had to disband and then ended up on okay, I'll end up on a Facebook or another platform because they can pay for the hosting.
Right.
In many cases, it's as simple as that, and then, okay, we'll go to this single place. So the fact that that's going to be possible is really exciting. So that's thread one, was that a lot of our core team and ethos come from this background that some of these community tools in the early internet were incredibly powerful for relationship building, for sense making, for creation, and really the cultivating of that early community spirit that builds into something. So this idea of having one of the early applications of Holochain be a community's application was a really big deal. And the second was that because a lot of the Hylo tooling was written in a modular way, it was seen, and the UI is very beautiful, it was seen as like a a great shortcut for a series of Holochain apps to be built that are tested and really work. Yeah, and probably there is a third. It's just, it was like, if we were going to make a move to acquire an organization, it has to be one like this, you know?
Mhm.
It,
With the
because it
values
just,
alignment.
with the values alignment, and also with the business model, you know, where it's like, it's a business model challenge, but there's too much there for it to just be another thing to you know, to disappear or to really struggle. So how can we breathe new life? And we didn't know the answer. We just thought by taking those actions, where somehow there'll be, you know, new life built, not just into Hylo, but then that becomes a pattern that we're committed to, just like you guys are.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm having this vision of like moving from the current sort of tech ecosystem where we have these huge lumbering creatures that are dominating the ecosystem and crushing everything else, to like a really rich, diverse ecosystem where little frogs can survive in their tiny niche and be totally healthy and happy without needing to be so big.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, and this we're going to be talking about applications where the community is owning and running the application. So if there are 1,000 users and they're all providing the infrastructure for the application, and then they're also hosting on Holo so it can go out to web users, well, you can get to 10,000, 100,000 users if that's what you wanted to do, when your core community is providing the infrastructure for you. It's a game changer, isn't it? Because suddenly that step doesn't have to be monetize, capitalize, fund, pay for hosting, and pay for all these kind of things. And suddenly you're on a train that never stops. You know, that step is all about community and community providing infrastructure, and who knows what comes from just that step being fundamentally different.
Yeah, and just maybe to explain it a little bit more simply for those who don't understand, basically each application is hosted on your own computer or device. So if you're running an application, you're running the full thing basically, and then you're deciding who else to interact with, who else to share your data with, who to be in community with in running this application. That's very simplistic understanding of it, but it means that each person has a lot more control over what they're doing in their digital world and who they're playing with. So, and then, you know, after Hylo was purchased by Holo, there was a really cool partnership that we formed where you guys were like taking the Hylo code and starting to build out some early Holochain H apps, using it, community apps. And I think Edward West, the founder, and Julia wanted to ideally ensure that the current Hylo code base would also continue to exist. And we felt excited about taking that on and to basically continuing to improve on the functionality, and seeing this opportunity to take this application, which a lot of heart and soul and sweat was put into, and building tools, as Claire mentioned, for kind of coordinating and organizing and decentralized emergent collaboration. So yeah, we formed a really cool partnership to allow that to happen, whereby you guys basically gifted us the code and the domain and the use of all of the assets and IP for Hylo, and just fully as a gift. And it's a really, really beautiful thing, and we want to thank you for that. And so, yeah, I'm curious if what was the conversations like on your end that led to that happening?
Well, it was just the right thing to do. It was very simple. Like we had the pieces, we're the pieces we need, and we're here. It's really simple, isn't it? When you're building infrastructure, then your mission is clear. You want people to benefit from the infrastructure you're building. It's a really nice orientation, and I think it has shifted a lot of where I spend my time on what I think about, because from that lens, when someone else benefits, we benefit. but it's not necessarily with Holochain because there's no transaction fees. It's not necessarily financially. And I've been spending a lot of time, with the meta capital framework and really trying to adjust my experience of moments through the lens of capitals rather than capital. And so like the idea of even a gift, well, so many capitals have been created as a result of that action. And for us, we had what we needed from, we could build a communities app on Holochain, and we could, which we can take pieces of the code base and put it on Holochain. We could use the structure of the libraries that we had a couple of the developers join our team. Like there was some fantastic things, and we had enough. And we wanted to see the Hylo continue, and you guys were keen, and it just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It was great.
If only more people in the world thought that way. Instead of like, so many people have, right, it's the profit motive. It's based on competition and scarcity, and I just deeply appreciate you and the whole Holo team just living into your values and living into kind of cooperation.
I'm pretty sure it was Mary, and she's like, "Look, David, this is really cool, and this is what I want to do." And I'm pretty sure I was like, "Sure."
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we should be shouting out to Mary right now. But yeah, I do also wonder whether it makes us sound like better than we are, but in a way, like we are, like we have to, our mission is big enough. Building what we're building is hard, and so we have to be focused on what we're doing. And so and one of the things we need to be focused on is also supporting a really beautiful ecosystem around us, and this was an opportunity, I guess, an unexpected opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah. Well, don't sell yourself short. I think, for me, when I look at our design principles that Claire showed earlier, it's like what you're building with Holochain directly matches all of those. I mean, we have the data sovereignty where users are in control of their own data. We have the kind of 7th generation thinking that's like resiliency. Like you're building a resilient distributed internet that is going to work when power grids go down and you have to just be, in your local community and your whatever applications are still running locally. There's like the collective stewardship aspect where, a lot of the decisions that are happening across the network are happening in a decentralized kind of emergent way where different people are validating data. And, I don't know, that might be an interesting conversation to talk about how decisions about the infrastructure happen, but I feel like that's kind of built into it. Relationship centered design, where it's all about people in relationship with each other directly, peer to peer. Transparency, it's open source, it's free. There's a quote that was somewhere in the Holochain website that really spoke to me. It's like, these simple building blocks create something surprisingly robust, a multicellular social organism with a memory and an immune system. It mimics the way that biological systems have managed to thrive in the face of novel threats for millions of years. So great. And I feel like that's also what we're trying to build with Hylo on the kind of user experience side of building tools to enable communities to be resilient and to collectively govern and sense make.
It's cool though. Like one of my practices generally, actually, morning and evening, and it's evolved a little bit because I was just thanking my ancestors, and I won't get into too much of the detail of where that's come from and how, but and then it has evolved also into looking down and looking at like the next generation, like my 2 kids and then unborn, from there.
Hmm.
And then a friend of mine was telling me about a Muslim practice where he puts his ancestors to work. And so he just cycles through them and says, like, we'll do this and this and this. So I started doing that. So all my ancestors, so thank you, wherever they are, they're all working at the moment. Well, the ones who want to are working. But now, if I'm going 7 generations forward, I think I'm going to put my future, the unborn, whatever the next generations, to work as well. And because it sounds like what you guys are doing. So yeah, let's see what happens with that.
Nice. I love that. So let's talk a little bit more detail about how Hylo and Holo can and will and plan to play together in the future, and kind of how social networking might look and work on Holochain. I think one of the pieces I'm curious about that I don't fully understand yet is the sort of interoperability between applications and how like data might flow from, someone's using the kind of Hylo UI or interface, but then they decide they like Junto better, or maybe they're just different in the ways that they let you interact with the same data. How could data flow between them? And I believe this is something that is fundamental, or is being worked on at least in Holochain, but I'm curious to know more about how that
It's fundamental. I mean, firstly from an identity perspective, huh? So like the persona is bridging between applications, and then contributions are moving between applications as well. And it's again like it's multi-dimensional as well, as because if I'm using a particular application, I want to use it in a different way, and coordinating with a few people, and we all choose to do that. Well, then we're running in theory what was the same application, that it's evolved into something that's evolved into something else, and in theory we can just be moving between them, because they're all, when we say application, what we're then talking about is a network. And from a non-technical perspective, that to me means like, okay, well, if I'm moving from, chatting to my wife, and then like with my kids and my wife, and then I go and meet a friend and this, like I'm moving between these different networks there. And there is the persistence of that network, and what was created at that point of time remains, in that we have a memory of that interaction and that experience. And so when that particular group comes together again, then you're building off that memory, and moving in whatever direction you as a group are moving. And like, in a way, that's how Holochain networks work. And just think about all those different groups that I've described could be networks. And the network is an application, and then they can be using kind of the same application, just choosing to use it differently, and running a little bit of different code, and therefore you can be coordinating across those applications. You could be the same persona, but just interacting in a slightly different way. Technically, how it all works, frankly, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Only because, so right now with Holochain, we've had a few goes, and we're on a really good track on how we create peer-to-peer networking within a Holochain application. And that powers Holo, which is the first major application we're launching as an organization, which is distributed hosting. That is, when I serve an application, it's not going to a data center somewhere owned by a big company or an outsourced to a massive data center. It's routed across all of the hosting providers, which would be people on this call, and people who participated in the Indiegogo campaign, people who want to run a different kind of an internet. So that's that. So Holochain is right now preparing for that use case, to be ready for that. How then the data is bridging, personas are bridging between applications, data bridges between applications. I'll have a better handle on when it's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like one of the things that would be key, and I think we're really excited about this, and I've spoken to Eric of Junto, for example, which is another social network that's kind of building on Holochain, is just coming to agreement about the data structures, right? It's like having some kind of collective process of like, this is what it means to, this is how we describe a post. This is what it looks like to comment on a post, and just come up with some kind of agreed upon ways of defining the different types of interactions and transactions. Actually, I'm curious, one of the groups that has been really excited to play in the Hylo and Holo space is working on something called REA, Resource Event Agent, the values flows group. And they have a pretty like well specified definition of how value flows around in a system, and transactions happen, and people share resources and do things together. I'm curious if you are thinking about, and maybe this isn't at the level you're at right now, you're still working on the kind of core infrastructure, but just having these kind of conversations of like, how do we come to agreement about what data looks like across the whole ecosystem and how we interact with each other.
Well, so that's interesting. So firstly, I find like taking this natural living systems perspective, and let's just say in terms of like I'm very limited in my understanding of science. So it may be, but what I understand is that cells were originally very simple and became increasingly complex.
Yeah.
And that to do something new generally starts from one person or a couple of people and gets held tightly, and then can grow and expand and let go slowly over time.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is like, the initial building blocks will be and should be as simple as cells from 100 million years ago.
Right.
So, which is exactly why so many people come to Holochain and say, I want to build this thing that changes the world in these 750 million ways. And I want to build it tomorrow because it's already designed in my head. Right. And I'm like, okay, but it'd be really nice if we just had a really effective module for a post, which also can be a comment. Mm-hmm. And so that's the beauty, isn't it? The ecosystem is holding that at one with this. And so however that coherence happens around like an agreed standard for a post, there'll still be other people that want to do it differently, like the web, and then there'll be, but because it's supposed to be a modular design and you're using open source building blocks and composing applications from those building blocks, there's a fair chance that as standards or good quality building blocks emerge, that they'll just be used. Right. And then the level of what we compose will start in the future from a more complex base, and then a more complex base, and then a more complex base. So I'm imagining that, I think one of these ideas of like, what's the magic? I think like the underlying magic is this really light but deep emphasis on tooling and structures supporting communities and behaviors. And so that pattern that I just described is a really simple way of maintaining coherence of data integrity across application types that is simpler than humans trying to work out how to do it. Because we'll overcomplicate it, because it's a complicated thing for us to agree on stuff. Right. But if inherent in the pattern is kind of like the basis for ever increasing complexity of agreement, but it won't really allow you to agree complex stuff until you've agreed the simple stuff. It's likely that it will emerge because the structure is supporting it.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like so evolutionary, right? It's like there's kind of be a messy process of different kind of competing ideas, and the right things will emerge and evolve over time, starting with the simplest layers. And it's very similar to how we are thinking about designing and building Hylo, and just in the sense of it being, like we said, this holonic architecture, right? It's like these the whole composed of these small pieces that kind of work together at different levels, and yeah, and enable this more emergent decentralized coordination. Kind of perfect. In our last 7 minutes here, I want to open the space to questions from the other folks that are here. And maybe, yeah, if you want to, you can just unmute yourself. There's not that many folks here, or if you want to raise your hand in the chat, you can do that as well. And while we're waiting on that, David, if there's other thoughts that you wanted to make sure to say before we end. Or if you're just feeling.
Love some questions.
Yeah. I feel like.
We've got one. Oh, we've got a couple here. Anita's just been on a meetup with me for the last 2.5 hours. I can get spaces to be super intense. So let's see how intense we can get in 6 minutes.
Alicia has the question. Oh, people can't unmute themselves. Let me allow prisoners to unmute. Sorry about that. So maybe Carrie and then Alicia. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
Presentation. I was wondering what your biggest challenges are right now with getting this, well, getting it through, getting it done. Probably more than one, but you can just pick
No,
one.
you asked the biggest. Oh, you actually. I'm going to only answer biggest challenge. Okay. The evolutionary process I described, we've made in the underlying Holochain layer, we've made huge advances over the last 7 months, and knowing when things are at a stage to expand that core. That doesn't necessarily mean like your core team. It just or when to change the patterns of work, or when to keep things going as they're going. I'd say that's the biggest challenge. I don't know if that's a bit too abstract for someone, but when you're building say you've got a startup and there's just these two, the co-founders. At what stage do the co-founders open up and build a leadership team? And at what stage really do then they let go? And in this case with Holochain RSM, say we've got this really core team. And at what stage does art, architecture, and holding the integrity of the vision, and does that last another 2 years? Does that last another year? At what stage of the team embodied it? It's just playing with that. I'd say that is the biggest challenge right now, and that because I'm specifically answering about Holochain, the technology, rather than all sorts of other things. When is it? When is it from the team really, really ready to let go?
Thanks. Alicia?
Yay. Okay, I'm not on mute. I have a question for the team, for the Hylo team. Claire mentioned earlier that you have 50 communities and 1,500 users. And I'd love to hear a bit more about what kinds of communities you currently have on there, and like how did they get there? What do they use it for?
Yeah, we highlighted a bunch of them in the call last night. There's like the NorCal Resilience Network that is doing community resilience in Northern California. There's the Buckminster Fuller Institute, which is doing their kind of educational course, Trim Tab Space Camp. And they're also involved in 2 other projects running on Hylo, Design Science Studio, which is kind of supporting a bunch of different artists working on systems change projects all over the world. And regenerosity.world, which is kind of like organizing people around regenerating the world in different ways.
Mm.
Let's see, there's a circular economies group in Seattle that's focused on how we create kind of closed loop, zero waste economic systems.
And what would you say, like, what do they mainly use it for at the moment? Is it like decision making or resource management, or?
At the moment, it's like, I would say it's closest in functionality to a Facebook group. It's like communication,
Okay.
sharing resources, asks and offers, yeah, having discussions on various topics. Then there's unique things like the mapping, geographic mapping functionality is unique. And so there's like putting resources on a map and finding each other locally to work on projects with each other, stuff like that. So it's a pretty wide range, and we're still in the very early days, right? These are the early adopters who are down to use a platform that's a little bit rough around the edges still. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I wasn't on the last call, so I guess I didn't,
Yeah.
the overview.
Yeah, check it out. It was a really great call last night to get the full picture of what we're doing. And actually, that's maybe a good question for David too. Like, are there people building apps on Holochain right now, and who are they?
Yeah, super. Yeah, so we've talked about Eric from Junto. I've got a really wonderful interview going up next week with the guys from RedGrid, who are building the Internet of Energy on Holochain, and they've got a great pilot at a university campus that wants to go zero emissions by 2030, and powering that kind of like the energy trading and potentially messaging infrastructure on Holochain. There's like a data, like a browser that's organized around personal data first, and then the browsing experience called Dissenter. There's a series of tools that are being built around like dev tooling. A guy called Phil Beadle build some really incredible tools that he calls it CRISPR, because it's the like ability to just go and do anything with DNA, and yeah, the ways of organizing and collaborating development work. There's say 50 apps sort of along those lines that are in development right now, and with our different versions, there's been several hundred over time, sort of come and gone as people blow in and start building something and it's not ready and play around something else. Yeah, so there's some really cool stuff happening. I do expect that machine to machine communications will take off faster than human communications. It's just again, my hypothesis is that we are when we externalize this idea of ownership and control over privacy, etc., and ownership of data, I think we get more frustrated when we see it happening to like your device or something like that, rather than when it's happening to ourselves. I think we're so used to what's happening to ourselves, it's a little bit harder to, and it's so pervasive, it's a little bit harder to make that change. So when I see things like the Internet of Energy, and you see this idea of how to create communication across all these energy generating or transmitting devices, and that system isn't fair, or a device doesn't have agency in that network, then I can see the creatives of that network getting very frustrated and wanting all of the devices to have agency, in a way that we're often nicer to our pets than we are to our partners. And so in a weird way, I do have a wondering whether this, like a lot of these tools that are built for social human coordination, a lot of the earlier successful experiments might be with device communication for that reason. But let's see. That's just something I'm watching.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we are at our top of the hour here, and so I think maybe we'll do a little wrap, and then I see a question from Gaia Union, but I just want to if people have to jump off to other meetings, or I don't know if David, you have a couple more minutes to stay, we can answer a couple more questions. But yeah, wanted to say thank you. If anyone has to leave, thank you for being here. We will share the recording as soon as we can. And yeah, excited to keep having these conversations. So if you need to leave, great. Otherwise, we have a question from GaiaUnion.com.
Hey, family, thank you very much for having this space. First of all, I feel very, well, particularly moved because what you're doing, like this integration between Hylo and Holochain, is something very similar than we are doing in another groups, like an integration between these kind of platforms. And yeah, well, first of all, I felt the call when you say like the inclusivity, well, you know, but the presentation, like it was a call for like different cultures, no? Like we are from Latin America, and for sure there's like certain different but cultural, but at the same we find we meet in the core values and the vision. And well, first question is how could we integrate these developments? And some of the answers that I had when with the last commentaries was how what we are basically proposing is the way that different communities can interact based on like a global passport. So each community can have their own kind of visa and programs. And so we're developing this, and we're trying to put this into technology as well. But well, at least the idea and the vision of having an integrated international community is certainly very important for us. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. What's your name?
Felipe.
Felipe.
Colombia.
Hey. Awesome. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I just posted a link in the chat if you want to get involved in kind of Hylo development and track what's going on there and participate. There's a Hylo community called Building Hylo. So that's a good place to join. David, I don't know if you have links for the best ways to get involved in what's going on with Holochain. And yeah, I'd love to hear more about what you're working on, Felipe. And you can also, I'll just put our sort of group email address if you want to just email us more about what you're up to. And we love having conversations with aligned people doing similar work and trying to figure out how we can all collaborate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any final burning questions before we give it a wrap? Cool. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, David. And yeah, this is just the beginning of an exciting co-evolutionary process.
Thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for joining.
Just have a beautiful weekend.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Ciao.
Congrats on the launch.
Thank you.